I'm the first to say metering and billing stuff is not the most interesting topic in the world, but it is kind of important when it actually comes to trying to build a cloud business, and that's where Flexiant is focused. And so what I want to just do is very quickly take you through some of our thoughts on the problems in building and metering when you've got to suddenly deal with issues like multi-tenancy rather than single tenancy, multi-currency problems, and even multinational problems in terms of how you relate all this together. So very quickly, who and why? Who are we? What are we about? This isn't a product pitch. I hate product pitches. But very quickly, basically, I run product for Flexiant. Flexiant is a software company that enables service providers to build their own cloud platforms. We are very much focused on service providers in that we help them to build commercial cloud platforms. We're not so interested in helping people build private clouds in their own data centers. We'll leave that to the likes of VMware. But we're very, very good at what we do. The reason that we do that is because we've got a very long heritage in the service provider industry in that I used to run a service provider, and we actually built the world's second public infrastructure as a service platform, which we launched back in 2007. I know that's a fairly bold claim, but no one has called me on it in 6 years of me claiming that, so I think I can stand it up. So basically, we're all about service providers, we're all about monetization. So what do we actually do? What does our software do? Very, very quickly. We orchestrate and manage the hardware layer. So that's the hypervisor, the storage, the network, everything else there on top. The bits you see in orange, basically, the bits that we directly manage and control, the bits in grey, the bits we indirectly control. We also then do orchestration, so we do all the resource orchestration on top of that, so that's product management, product catalog, image and services management, and the complete provisioning side, customer management, role-based access, so that's customers, users and groups and permissions and everything else like that. Complete admin access for admins and resellers if they actually have reseller capabilities, end user self-service portal, user API, so it's all very, very powerful APIs. And last but not least, the billing and metering piece, which is built into the platform as well. And that's the particular bit I'm going to focus on today, which is the billing and metering side of things. Just to give you an idea of some of the challenges that you might have if building a platform like this. So what is the problem? Why is this such a big deal? The problem is the fact that traditionally, when service providers have run cloud platforms, or not even cloud platforms, but when they've run traditional services businesses, they've been single tenant platforms, so they're dedicated hardware for each individual customer, and they're nice and siloed. They're selling direct to the customer, there's no channel involvement, there's no complications there. They're in a single location, and they're paying by the month or paying by the year. So you have 100 customers, your worst case scenario, you might have 100 customers with 1,000 servers. Your worst case scenario is you have 1,200 bills a year, and you might only be 100 bills a year to actually process. Not exactly very many data points, it's very easy to manage. You can practically have someone sitting there with a spreadsheet, and that's about all you need to worry about. Unfortunately, with cloud, all of that changes. All of a sudden, you've got multi-tenant platforms. You've got customers, you have multiple customers sharing the same resources, sharing them on a very granular basis. And you might have 1,000, 10,000, 100,000 customers on the same platform, and you've got to look at what they're all doing and track what they're all individually doing. Otherwise, if you can't track what they're doing, and we've seen a number of service providers build their own cloud platforms and then go, how are we going to make sure we know what they're using so we can charge them? Well, we didn't think about that. You wouldn't believe it, but it happens. So you've got that problem. You've then got the fact that a lot of service providers are starting to work with channel partners as an avenue for growth. So where they're looking to add solutions that might be resellers, so anything from web design agencies right through to systems integrators and VARs and distributors. So all of a sudden you go, well, how do I track what the resellers are using? How do I give them a maximum amount of control that they can do so I don't have the overheads and the burdens? You've then got multiple locations. What if more and more cloud providers, one of the big advocates of them is you're in more than one location. Plane can hit the data center and you're all good. It's not quite as simple as that, but how do you make sure you've got multiple different locations? You're actually making all that data come together. You're making sure that not just the metering and billing data, but all the provisioning capabilities are managed in one central system. And finally, you may still have subscription billing, but you're equally likely to have multiple different metering and billing models depending on the customers. You might have subscription on a monthly basis, you might have daily, you might have hourly, you might have by the minute or by the usage billing. And you're quite likely to have different customers with different billing structures depending on requirements. Traditional billing platforms, whether they're accounting packages, whether anything from, if it's QuickBooks to Sage to whatever else it might be, trying to solve these kind of problems just doesn't happen. They're not designed to solve them. And to give you a very quick practical example of that, if we take an example, let's say you've got multiple different channels. So you've got 20 different companies reselling your service. Well, 20 companies reselling your service doesn't sound like much. So you've got 20 records you need to worry about. Then you've got, each of those has got 200 customers. So at that point, you've got 4,000 records you need to worry about. Then each of those has got multiple different billing models. So let's presume that the average customer is billing some things on a subscription and some things on a pay-as-you-go basis. There's a bit half and half. So let's say that that's got you up to 6,000 different records or different things you need to keep track of. Each of those customers has got 20 applications running. All of a sudden, that's 120,000 things you've got to keep track of. Then each of those applications has got 7 different types of resources that need to be monitored. And I'll come on to what they are in a bit more depth. You're up to 840,000 records. And all of a sudden, you're actually even wanting to track that data every hour to actually see what usage is if you're doing it on a pay-as-you-go type basis. So in a month, you've immediately got 600 million different data points that you're trying to track, measure and rate. A bit different from having 1,200 for a year, and that's just for a single month. And obviously, a lot of this data gets consumed and discarded. You don't need to keep 600 million records a month for the next 3 years. But it's a massive data collection and gathering problem that a lot of people just don't anticipate how to do. And we've seen a lot of service providers say, oh, we're going to go to the cloud and we're going to sell on-demand services. Yeah, and we're going to sell it on a monthly basis because we can't figure out how to actually sell it any other way, because we can't figure out how to track it any other way. And that's a bit of a challenge. So a little bit more in depth, some of the what may be less obvious problems that are in this area. Managing the product and services availability for different customers. It's very likely for different customers who have different requirements, you may well want to offer different packages or different levels of service. So you'll have some customers that love the idea of hourly billing, some that might want daily billing, some that actually really want committed to a monthly and a yearly bill. In a past life, I had a Premiership League football club, and they loved everything that we did, and they loved the idea you could have all this scalability and everything else and the technology that we enabled. And because, as you can imagine, very simply, for a company like that, their traffic, very simply, basically did this on occasion, depending on football matches and player signings and the like. And they turned around to me and said, yeah, but we want a fixed bill. We don't want any changes every month. I didn't want to point out to them their entire yearly bill worked out to what they paid one player for 1 week, but they still wanted a fixed bill. And so you have got some challenges where you have different customers that want various different models. It's not all about pay-as-you-go. You've then got different pricing. You might have some customers on one rate, at a list rate. You might have some customers on different levels of discounts. You might need to deal with grandfathered rates as you change your pricing as time goes on, if you increase your pricing and you want to keep customers grandfathered in at other rates. Finally, you might even have different specific service offerings for certain customers. I know we had an issue once where we had a client that a customer of theirs wanted to run very, very large virtual machines. And so they wanted to offer 64 gigabyte RAM virtual machines. They were very happy to do this for this particular customer, but didn't, and to enable them to have self-service up to whatever their account limits were. But they didn't want to enable that for all of their customer base. And it might be very large configurations, it might be small. There's any number of different ways you can do that. But again, that's an issue you need to consider. If you want to genuinely be as flexible as possible to different customers, how do you deal with all these kind of use cases? Trust me, it's harder than it looks. So on to statistics gathering. This is where the bulk of the data actually comes in. That people think, oh, well, it's just about selling someone a virtual machine running, and that's simple enough. Actually, when it comes to, if you're trying to do sort of agile and flexible models, you need to be gathering an awful lot of different data on a very granular basis to actually understand usage. And I won't read every single one of these off, you'll be pleased to know. I don't particularly like reading PowerPoint slides out when you can read faster than I can. But my point is that with all of these, they need to be tracked on a granular basis. They need to be tracked on an easy to reconcile basis, and still hooked back into all the points I was making previously about different pricing structures and different intervals for billing. And it becomes a bit of a headache pretty darn quickly. So then you've got the rating challenges. So you might have some services that you include free of charge in a pre-configured package. So someone's paying $20 a month, for example, or 20 euros a month, I should say. But then you might have other services that you want to include free for some customers and chargeable for other customers. You might want to charge different amounts, depending on the data center the customer's in. So if they're in Luxembourg, you might want to give it to them cheaper than if they're in France, for example, or Germany or the UK, because of your underlying infrastructure costs. But you want them to be able to manage all this themselves. You might want to add your own custom billing rules to allow things, if you're already a traditional business and there's certain ways that you've done things, like, for example, something random like you give bandwidth free on Sundays, you might do. You might, then how do you actually think about implementing problems like that into a traditional billing system? You might want to bundle packages together so that they can easily bundle sets of resources together, coming back to the football club example, so they can go, this is my bill per month, it gives me everything I need. I don't want to see 17 pages of different pricing permutations to just work out what I might want to consume, which is one of the common complaints for people consuming services like Amazon, for example. And finally, last but probably least actually, is you might also want to offer discounts based on different quantity usage as well. So it's a pretty complex set of things you need to worry about. Billing and payments. You might have some customers that are paying in advance, some customers are paying in arrears. They might be paying by credit card, they might be paying by invoice, and then you've got bank transfers and settling these kind of issues. You may well want to integrate with multiple different payment processes, or even take payments in multiple different countries, depending on the countries that you're operating in. I know one thing that certainly annoys some providers, some companies, is, okay, so I'm consuming Amazon services in Dublin, why on earth am I paying for this in dollars? It should, and I'm in the UK, maybe I should be paying in pounds, maybe I should be paying in euros, but why am I paying in US? So actually handling those kind of issues. If you are operating, especially if you're operating with resellers and you want to actually be able to allow them to process their own payments in their local countries, how do you deal with local payment providers? We've got a customer we got just yesterday who wants us to integrate with a Russian payment provider that we've never even heard of. It's actually fairly easy for us to do that, but these are the kind of challenges you have. And finally, you may well have some level of existing systems that you actually want to integrate with, whether it's for CRM or whether it's for billing. And there's various different ways you can do that. You might, or it might be an off-the-shelf package, it might be a proprietary system that you've built in-house yourself, as a lot of service providers have, or it might even be a SaaS-based accounting type package, which there's a lot of great ones being that are launched and growing right now. And then on that, say, okay, you go, right, that's what we're going to integrate, but what level are we going to integrate at? Do you want the raw metering data, the 600 million records a month? I don't think so. Do you want the rating data of just the individual charges? Do you want the invoice line item, or do you want the invoice item? This might sound pretty boring stuff, but these are the conversations we have with every single service provider going live as to how do you want to integrate this. So they're all things to certainly think about. And that's pretty much me. I hope that was useful. I'm running out of time. I wanted to leave just a couple of minutes for any questions. There's the website address and the blog and everything. If anyone does have any questions now or afterwards, then please ask away.